Welcome, everyone, to the ComedySportz Podcast, starring your host, Christine Rollo Capriolo. And now, the man who can play any position, Kurt Copus Scholler.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the ComedySportz Podcast. It's a super duper special episode. Today, we have my mentor, the man from LA, on the phone right now because he was too busy to come to Milwaukee, but someday we'll get him. Hey, everybody. It is Kurt Scholler. Kurt, thanks for being on the phone today.
Thanks for letting me be on the phone. This is nice. This is swell.
This is so exciting. I even dressed up for today's episode.
Did you?
I did.
Did you?
I'm
wearing sweatpants and a thermal shirt, so I guess that's good for me, though. That's good for me.
That's good. Well, thanks for dressing up.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you here. You were the guy who taught high school leagues when I started in ComedySportz.
Wow.
Yes.
Really? What year was that when you started?
I started in 91 with high school leagues.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think the high school leagues started back up again in 90, right?
Okay.
Is that right? Maybe 90, 91?
Yeah. So we're going to go back to your beginning, though, before we get to 1991. Let's talk about where you're from.
I am from Menominee Falls, Wisconsin.
Okay.
That's where I was born and raised. And then eventually made it down to the east side of Milwaukee. You see, I had, in high school, I started doing a little bit of drama. I was a wrestler for a while.
Okay.
And I didn't want to wrestle anymore. I always wanted to do drama, but didn't know how to get into it. And then I had a teacher named Tom New, a drama teacher, who would leave the school wearing a ComedySportz Letterman jacket. And I was like, what is that? And he never really got into it, but he said, I remember the year I graduated, he was like, it's just on the east side of Milwaukee. Come down and see a show. So when I was going to college, I stopped down and saw the show. And the bug bit me, and I was like, I just wanted to get into workshops and learn right away. And I tried to get in at the end of '88. Okay. I remember talking to Bo Johnson outside of Cult's restaurant, going, hey, when's the next workshop? And he said it starts up in '89. And so I jumped into workshops, and I first started doing shows actually in Racine, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I did that for a little bit, and then Dick said, no, you need to play in Milwaukee. And then my first show in Milwaukee was a road show instead of a regular home show. So I always thought that was kind of fun, too.
Okay. So what year are we talking that you started then playing?
89. So 89. So I started workshops in 89, and then in August I was playing. I started playing in Racine, and then I think by December I was in Milwaukee.
Okay.
I was kind of doing both for a little bit.
So you didn't do high school league. You weren't in high school league.
No, the high school league was defunct. I don't think it was going on at that time.
Oh, okay. But you had Tom New was your teacher at school?
Tom New. Do you know, and the funniest thing is that, so Tom New is a ComedySportz player. He was there for a long time. And I always called him Mr. New. That was his name. He was my teacher.
I still call him Mr. New, and he was never my teacher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to, because he was my drama teacher in high school, he always called him Mr. New. But then when I started playing, I couldn't stop calling him Mr. New.
Right.
And then there was a point of where we're in the dressing room, and he's kind of a guy that when he gets dressed, he doesn't care. He's just stark naked.
Yeah, totally.
And then he goes, I think it's time you start calling me Tom. That's like, good point. Good point.
Yeah,
so,
I'm seeing everything.
Yeah. Too much.
Saw
too much.
What was Racine like?
Racine was great. There was the interesting thing about Racine is that the two ladies that ran Racine ComedySportz was Chris Skews and Sean Britton, and they were wonderful ladies, wonderful people to run at ComedySportz. They were a lot of fun. Yeah. And I just got, Dick said, hey, they have, we're log jammed here in Milwaukee. Racine said they have somebody. If you want to go down there, there's no guarantee you'll play, but just jump in their workshops. Okay. And I jumped in the workshop on a Wednesday, and then I played that Friday, which was really sweet.
Nice.
And then Chris Skew's husband, Mike Skews, is the reason I got into acting, like doing TV stuff, TV and commercial stuff.
Oh, wow. He's out in L.A. now?
No, I don't know where he is right now, but he was doing a lot of stuff where he was doing local commercials, and he was going down to Chicago and auditioning in Milwaukee, but he got me in touch with agencies in Milwaukee, local talent agencies, where I could start doing commercial work, industrial video work. And he was in movies. He was in The Fugitive, which
really?
I just saw last night.
Nice.
He had like a part in the movie, not a huge part, but a part where I remember I went out to see the movie in the theater, and I couldn't wait to see his name in the credits.
Yeah.
But he was so kind and and he really led me to that point of like anybody who I know that wanted to get into acting, especially through Comedy Sports. Like if somebody wanted to know, I was going to try to be that way that Mike was with me, and just really trying to open the door and make it feel safe, and to not worry about it, and know that we all have different paths, and it's going to take a different path to do what we want to do. But here's what worked for me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So you always wanted to get into acting from the time you were a little kid?
I think I wanted, there's there was something, a point in my life where I remember I loved playing with the action figures. I remember like as far as like Buck Rogers, you know, remember Buck Rogers? Sure. So I always thought like if I couldn't be frozen in time and end up in the future, I would act as if I could.
Aww.
So I basically had those two things. Either I was going to jump into the future and be Buck Rogers, or be an actor. So I guess it was just easier.
It was easier.
As weirdly as that sounds.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were playing then when you went from Racine to Milwaukee,
yep.
What did you feel was different? Did it feel bigger in Milwaukee?
Oh, absolutely. And Milwaukee was sort of the mecca of comedy sports. I mean, it still is, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, they played out of they played out of I can't remember the bar that it was in, and you had to like set up the stage before the show started because they used that back room a lot. But at Cult's Restaurant, it was already set up. Like they already had that back room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just felt more like stage. And Cult's Restaurant to me is like the best place ever to play a game because the stage was so high.
It was.
The people were crammed in. You had like 120 people.
Yeah.
It was such a great place to do a show because just laughter is totally contagious. Like that totally, if you never believed that, you had to see a show there and understand that.
Yeah.
It was hard to fail in that venue because it was just so tight, you know?
Right. So when you started playing in Milwaukee, who do you remember playing with? Who was there?
I guess it was like all the people, like Joe Cortese, Angelo Farina, Bob Orvis, Bo Johnson. Dick didn't really play a lot when I was in 89.
Yeah.
Every once in a while he would do shows. But like Sean McKenna came back to perform. Sean McKenna was like the youngest performer at that time to do shows. He was like 13.
Yeah.
First started doing it, and then he went away, and then he came back at the same time that I started.
Okay.
With Peter Alberts, and Bo was our teacher, and as you know, that turned into the Dead Alewives later on down the road.
Right.
But yeah, so all those guys like Angelo, John Plesnick, Joe Cortese, Carol Bauman, anybody I'm forgetting? Bruce was away for a while. Brian Green was in and out, which is great. But yeah, it was a stable of like amazing performers to watch, and also for them to be my mentors.
Right.
And I didn't get to see John Bank was like one of my main it was one of the inspirations because the way he played physically, I always just was drawn to, and I didn't get to see him perform on stage. I only got to watch videotapes of him in Dick's office. But I used to watch John Bank and just be like, I'm amazed at this guy. But he's one of the founding members of Comedy Sports who I adore.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, what do you remember learning from some of these guys, some of these veterans when you walked in?
Well, here's the interesting thing. As far as me going from like performing in Racine and then going to Milwaukee and then eventually out in LA, I mean, every ComedySportz sort of has its strengths and weaknesses, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the strengths I saw from Milwaukee, and the thing that I hopefully have carried with me, is that sort of that idea of no one could read an audience the way that Milwaukee could.
Yeah.
In my mind, like just, and maybe it's because a couple of our players were worked for a company where you got to be around kids, and I can't give away identities here on the podcast, you know what I'm saying, of their jobs.
Yeah.
But some of their jobs were when they would go around and perform for kids a lot. You know who I'm talking about.
I totally do, yes.
But those guys, the way that of taking care of audience members and really kind of getting the audience involved, that's I think was such an carry with me. Yeah, there's the improv. There's also just the show. Like there was nothing like it felt like at time the amount of shows that we did in Milwaukee, no other ComedySportz I don't think has ever done or does.
Yeah.
The idea that we used to do, you know, I don't know how many shows they do now, but the idea that for a while there was like 7-10 shows at the Space a week, and then over 600 road shows a year. Like it was such great training.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, for sure.
And performing from like the elderly in a room, and then going and we performed at a prison. I did a 3-person in a prison.
You did?
Me, Paul Stazak, and Bob Warvis.
Oh my God.
And I remember I had an earring in my ear because I don't know.
Because that's how you used to roll. Yeah.
That's how I rolled.
Yeah, man.
But when I went into prison, they actually made me take out even that little piece of metal.
Why?
And like my belt, and we had to take off everything that we had to go into prison. And basically the prisoners it was like in a gym. And there was a guy by the door with a shotgun. And I was like, wow, this is like that kind of training you can't get except for doing it. You know what I mean? Like, and that is the wide variety of different audiences that we've always had to do shows for, you know?
Did you make them laugh?
Yeah, it took a while. There was, we had at that time, and I don't know if, we used to have bags with props, wigs, and hats and jackets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
As soon as we put on a wig and made one of us a female character, that audience erupted and went crazy.
That's awesome.
And we were all best friends at that point.
Oh, and so you still write to some of those guys, right?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was that there was a priest that hired us.
Oh my!
And he was just like, before our show started, he goes, "Don't be insulted if I have to cut your show after like 5 minutes to start. Most of these guys don't have an education past 3rd grade."
Okay.
And we had a magician in here last week that I had to take off right away. And so we were kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to be hard.
Oh, right.
But we managed to do both shows the full length.
Nice.
And, we even had audience members come down and join us. That was really stupid if I think back to it.
You had audience volunteer games?
Yeah. We did Dr. Know-It-All with what we were like, who's the toughest guy? No. We said, who's the toughest guy in the room? And there was like, Rock. And we had Rock come down and do Dr. Know-It-All with us. And as you know, ComedySportz is usually a family show, of course, but that night it was not. It was anything but a family show.
Oh my God.
But it was fun.
What an awesome experience.
Yep. Terrifying, but fun.
But you made it. You got out okay.
So far. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still okay.
So then you started teaching high school leagues, like I said, when I don't know if that was your first year in 91 teaching high school leagues when I started.
Yeah, 91, 92. The league had gone down. There was a problem with the I'm not sure. There was a parent and the directors at that time. Something happened and it just crashed. Okay. I was only in ComedySportz for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And Dick was like, hey, do you want to start up the high school league again? And I was like, okay. Yeah. But I still felt like, because I started ComedySportz when I was 19.
Yeah.
So when I was teaching you guys, I was like 21. I wasn't really that far off in age-wise from you guys.
Right.
So it was, but nobody cared, and I learned as I went. You know what I mean? I was trying to find out different exercises and games to play, but yeah, eventually. And then my brother went on to teach ComedySportz too for a while during the workshops, the advanced workshops. Did
he start after you or before you?
He started after me.
Okay.
He went through workshops, I want to say in 92. I want to say 92.
Okay. We're talking Steve Scholler here.
Yeah, Steve Scholler. And it was in 90, maybe a little bit, 92, 93, he started doing workshops. Funny thing was is that at that time I felt like I was pretty well established with the Milwaukee ComedySportz group. Like I felt like I was a regular member. And,
right.
And I think Steve kind of was like, I don't want to come into this being like necessarily thought of as Kurt's brother. I want to be coming as Steve, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And he was very nervous of me watching his first, like his workshop show.
Uh-huh.
But there's no way I was going to miss it. I stuck in the back, and I remember the first laugh that he got, I jabbed some audience member next to me, and I was like, that's my brother.
Oh.
You know, I was so happy. But then it got to a point, too, and I guess I don't realize like how much we perhaps look. I mean, we have certain attributes. We're brothers, you can tell. Right. But there were times when people, like, I'd walk in from a remote, and people would be like, oh, weren't you just on the stage? Oh. I thought that was probably my brother. My brother was doing it. Well, and we're so different styles of playing. Like, that was always such a weird thing to me. I was like, really?
Well, what do you think? What do you think your style is? You were talking about you really like John Banks' physical style.
I think I was scared to talk a lot when I started doing ComedySportz. I was worried that what I had to say was not necessarily that interesting or funny.
Okay.
So I knew that physically, like I got into sort of the space work, and in college I had done some mime work and stuff like that. And I really got into just doing a lot of physical improv where I wouldn't have to say a lot. But eventually, like getting on stage in front of an audience was the best thing for you to learn what is passable, what is funny, what you got to be careful with, what you know what I mean? You just find you find where you can push walls out a little further,
right?
You know?
Right.
But I felt like at that point it was physically, but now I feel like I've turned into more of, because what I'm doing out here, we do a group called The Resistance.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, The Resistance is, I've gotten to do so many different shows, like with like the Dead Alewives was amazing. I got to do Old Milwaukee out here with Tom Clark and Tooney and Eric Price, and like that was such a fun. That was more of like just tag outs, but Resistance we're doing like a full, like an hour-long movie.
Oh, nice!
And it has beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
And we have a soundtrack. We have a person doing keyboards, and now we have a drummer too.
Nice.
Which is amazing. They're amazing, like giving the soundtrack for the show and with the lighting. And we have pads that we set up like instead of chairs, so we can actually make environments.
Okay.
And we can tear them down, and we can also, if we need to be physical over these pads, you know what I mean? Like if it was a Western and we want to have a bar fight and throw yourself over a bar, we could do that with these pads, which is great.
Okay. And this is all improv?
This is all improv.
Good.
And we kind of went more along the base of like when we started doing it, we all had backgrounds in ComedySportz and Improv Olympic and some with UCB and Groundlings. So we understand the idea of doing characters and narrative and finding the game. And we all knew all that sort of stuff. But what was fun when we started doing Resistance, you could have moments of real moments, like real emotional moments, because movies have to have those. You have to have those grounded moments. And I think I ventured towards that now. Like I love, like even doing sort of like finding really emotional moments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And riding that wave improv wise, you know?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's a blast to do.
Well, I want to back up to the Dead Alewives. So you're at ComedySportz Milwaukee. You started teaching high school league. And how did the Dead Alewives come about? And talk about that group.
So Dan Harmon was one of my first high school leaguers that I can remember. Him and a guy named Kyle from Riverside High School.
Okay.
I wish I knew his last name. But Dan showed up to the first workshop with a black eye. He was a senior. It was his last year in high school. And I remember just going, what happened to you? And to me, that kind of encapsulates Dan Harmon to me altogether. He's kind of a tortured soul.
Yeah.
But he helped me, like he was reffing. He co-ran it with me for a while, the high school league.
Okay.
And then what happened was there was 7 of us that got together, and I think it was kind of like spearheaded by Peter Alberts. And it was the original Alewives were myself, Money Carter, Bo Johnson, Sean McKenna, Peter Alberts, Brian Green.
He was an original?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Carol Bauman.
Really?
Yeah. So he played at a place called the Stone Toad. And their original name was, I don't even remember what the original name was, but it was something like something with the Stone Toad name in it.
Okay.
And then what happened was we started performing more, and then eventually Brian and Carol went away.
Right.
And we added Rob Schraub and Dan Harmon.
Yeah.
And then we were looking for a place to perform, and we went to the Bradford Beach Club, and at that point they were like, you need sort of a beachy name, because we're at the Bradford Beach Club.
Okay.
And so we came up with the Dead Alewives.
Now, for people who aren't from
we
Milwaukee.
have all those floating up on Lake Michigan onto the beach.
There you go.
We started doing improv. We started doing sort of different versions of what we did with ComedySportz, and we would be a little bit more,
risque,
not family oriented.
Right.
And then Peter had the idea of bringing in bands. Peter was a guy, a nightlife guy, and he knew all the bands in Milwaukee.
Right.
And he'd get them to come out and perform with us. And we had stints in ComedySportz, then at Bradford Beach Club, then at a different theater. Then we'd be back at ComedySportz, and it was all a matter of there were some of us that were still tight with ComedySportz. There were some of us that didn't want to be with ComedySportz.
Okay.
But Peter Alberts was the fire, the drive of that whole show. As far as it continuing on and actually being a successful group.
Yeah.
And then you had the amazing performances of Sean McKenna and Dan and Rob and Bo and Mundy, like that added to it. But Peter was really the drive of that show for sure.
And what was your goal in that group? How did you want to be different from the ComedySportz show? I
think we just wanted to extend it. We wanted to just we had never done anything but ComedySportz at that time, or had seen anything else. And so we really just wanted to kind of just try to push boundaries and see what we could do during shows. And we really did. I think that's where Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub definitely grew their own wings of the way that they wanted to perform and do shows. I mean, if you listen to Harmontown right now and hear Rob and Dan on there, I'm like, they haven't changed. I think that's where they got to spread their wings and really got to do everything they wanted to do sketch-wise and improv. We got to do bits and make up music stuff when the lights were up between scenes. For many a times, it was so fun. It was such a blast to do.
Oh, yeah. You guys had songs for every game.
Yeah.
I remember Growing and Shrinking.
And then the bands would play. We had bands that were just, we had Willie Porter. We had anything from like acoustic guitar to like rage metal playing for us on the side.
Yeah.
And we packed that house. We get like 250 people a week.
Well, you guys were incredible. Stage. Yeah, I was a little groupie. You guys were an incredible group of improvisers.
It was fun.
Oh, it was great. I remember I still have a foo chow. You had giveaways.
Yeah.
For, I don't know if I gave a suggestion or what, but you had a whole song about foo chow, la, la, la.
Yeah.
Was this little
insane.
Doll head
probably
that lit up?
Most, I don't know what you'd say, politically correct, but yes, it's, it was so fun to do. It was fun. And then we just sold shirts. We were doing things that we made Dead Alewives shirts. I remember I would sell those too, like after shows.
Yeah.
During the tournament. And we used to make a little money off the side, which was nice.
Well, then at some point, I might be backing up before that. There's a rumor you almost went to Texas with Diana Delaney.
Yeah, I was at a place where I was trying to figure out what to do, and I really loved ComedySportz. I loved the idea of it. And I remember I was in school. Like, I went to UW Milwaukee for 4 years, and
for drama?
I never declared a major.
Oh, okay.
I
said for drama, but no, you said you never declared?
No, because they didn't have a drama program at the time. The PTTP program, the Professional Theater Training Program, was not going at that time. But they had a couple of teachers, Marjorie Walker and Jules Walker. They were kind of running the drama department. So I got to learn from Jules Walker, like mime, which is always one of those things. That dude used to do mime on like Captain Kangaroo, and like he was like an amazing, like in my mind I'm like, that was really cool. Like that's one of those things where I go, I had him as a teacher. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I was on and off, like I didn't know what to do, and then I stopped going to school and I was just doing ComedySportz. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna get a business degree, like like an associate's degree in business. So I went to MATC, took 2 years, got my associate's degree in business management. And I really kind of had that feeling of like, I'm going to go somewhere and open up a ComedySportz or open up something. And then Diana moved down, and we were talking there for a little bit. She was like, you should come down and do this with me. And I was thinking about it. I was pondering. I can't remember what year she started. When did she start Houston?
When did she go down there? I have it written down somewhere. Did she go? I think in 90 she went down.
In 1990?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still kind of early for me. And
right.
I had not been on a plane. I had never been on a plane until 92.
Okay.
So I was 21 when I first got on a plane, and I flew to Mexico for ComedySportz. We were doing Club Meds.
Oh, that's right. They used to do Club Med down there.
Yeah. But I needed it that year because in 92, that's when ComedySportz moved to Jefferson.
Right, to Jefferson Street.
Yeah.
Now, did you always have aspirations of going out to LA? Because in, 98 you went out?
I think I always had dreams. Like once I started doing like commercial and TV stuff in Milwaukee, I always had that dream of doing something. I kind of wish I would have went down to Chicago for a while.
Okay.
But I didn't go till I was 28. But everybody's timing is different. You know what I mean? My time was when I was 28, and it was a move. You know what I mean? Like I had a lot of stuff happen with my family, and I just felt like it was the time to do it. It was the time to just go try, see, and actually it wasn't even go try. It was like, just go do it.
Yeah.
I always had that mindset too of like, I'm not going to do the whole, I'll give it 2 years, and if it doesn't work, then I'll come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I would have been back a lot sooner if that were the case.
So you and Mark Molnitsky took off.
What was that?
You and Mark Molnitsky took off together, right?
Yep. Who I still see.
Yeah.
His kids love our kids as well as our kids love their kids.
Oh, that's nice.
And but we see them a bunch, which is great.
He did the show already. He was in town in August, and I got to interview him.
He's so great.
Yeah.
I love that man.
Yeah.
They're a great family. Yeah, we when I decided to move, I really just wanted to try. I felt like I had enough stuff. My brother was an editor in Milwaukee, so he got to edit some TV stuff and, some stuff that I did in Milwaukee, some local commercials. So right when I got out here, I got a commercial agent, had a really nice agency. And so I did a ton of commercials in my 30s.
Okay.
And then started doing more theatrical stuff in my 40s, as far as theatrical being TV and movie stuff.
Now, did you do ComedySportz out in LA right away?
Yes, I did.
And what do you...
I did it a lot.
Yeah. A lot? What do you see as the difference from going from Milwaukee, which you called the mecca of ComedySportz, and then performing in LA?
LA was much more of a musical improv group too. Like they had a lot of really great musical improvisers. Jeff Davis was in it at the time. Robin Roth, Matt Gorley, like all Pablo Mars. James Bailey. Yeah, all those guys were just wonderful musically, and it was a different kind of show. We were performing where UCB now does their show at the Tamarind Theater, and it's a little different. Almost felt like a little bit of a road show because we still had to set up the show beforehand. Okay. Where in Milwaukee you just rolled out, you had a bar.
Right.
I always loved having a bar right there.
Right.
So those were, it was a little different in that aspect, but there was a lot of like amazing performers out here. Frank Mesa was there from Minnesota. As I said, like Jeff Davis, Chris Tallman came up from New York. You had Michael Sherman and Gail Brennan coming down from San Jose. So a lot of some really great performers made their way out at that time to LA when I first arrived.
Okay.
And then, many performers came on from SAC Theater, from Florida. I mean, that's how I made connections with like Wayne Brady and
you were touring with Wayne Brady at one point?
Yeah, for like a year. Yeah, like for a year and a half. It was really fun when we did like the stand-up clubs. When we did stand-up clubs all over the place. But when we started doing the bigger theaters, it became a little bit harder because he was also doing his TV show at the time.
Right. Whose Line Is It Anyway?
So that was fun. I actually just got to do a show with him about a month ago at ComedySportz. So that was fun.
Oh, that's
him and Jonathan Mangum.
Oh, that's good. And then you said there's another group that you've been doing. I don't know if you still do it. Old Milwaukee in LA?
Yeah, we do it from time to time. And that was basically formed of all the old ComedySportz guys from Milwaukee. The old ComedySportz gang, rather, people. So it was Eric Price, Dave Tooney, Mike Kauth at the time. He was out with us.
Right, when he was in LA.
Right. And there was Peter Alberts, Tom Clark, and Brian Allman.
Okay.
And we went on, we did a cage match. Improv Olympic does this thing called the cage match where, you get 20 minutes each and you get voted. And for a while, the championship title had only gone 52 weeks. And we went up to 67 weeks, I guess. And then we held that honor for a while, which was really great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was neat. That was fun.
And you have done, just looking at your IMDb, Mr. Scholler, you have done a lot.
Who looks at that? Who's looking at that?
What? That was me. I'm stalking you.
It's all right. It's all right.
The Big Bang Theory, Young Sheldon, The Office, Criminal Minds, Bones, The Middle, General Hospital, How I Met Your Mother, 2.5 Men, Last Man Standing, Boston Legal, West Wing, The Sarah Silverman Program. And you've done Jimmy Kimmel. I watched your reel on Jimmy Kimmel. It's hilarious.
Thanks.
Yeah, so
I might be doing another Jimmy Kimmel this Wednesday, which would be fun.
So how'd you get into that? Is that just through your agency?
I got lucky with Jimmy Kimmel was like a really fun thing because I had gone in a long time ago as like an open call to give your headshot and stuff like that. And the neat thing about that is one of the head writers in Jimmy Kimmel right now is from ComedySportz. So I met my wife Natasha through ComedySportz.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful improviser, really extremely funny.
She's love her fantastic, to death.
Yeah. As I should. She's my wife.
I hope so. That's a good thing.
Love her. I better love her.
Yes.
But like, she's not only an amazing improviser, but she's an outstanding teacher. And she did the high school league out here. I managed starting up high school leagues in cities, and then I bailed.
Okay.
So I did it for a year and a half out here, and then handed it over to Natasha, and her and Greg made it into even a far better and greater thing. But she taught Danny Ricker, who's now the head writer over at Jimmy Kimmel, which is really sweet.
Oh, wow.
And I always constantly go, I get in because Danny probably put in a good word for me. And whenever I get there to shoot something, he's like, oh, you're doing that bit? Oh, that's great. That worked. I'm like, he's not. He doesn't even know I'm there. But also one of the most amazing and nice people. And as the ComedySportz circle of people we all know, just really humble and sweet as pie, Danny Ricker. Great guy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, your successes all branching off the beginning of ComedySportz. Do you think improv has helped you throughout all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, improv, absolutely. Because I got to, there's a point in 96 where I went up and I studied with Paul Sills and Keith Johnson up in Canada. And I've gotten like wonderful teachers to learn from, as far as Dave Chudnow, Bo Johnson, and John Pleasant. All my mentors that I listed before, all of them were my teachers.
Yeah.
But there's something more to it from the ComedySportz where you start at. You know what I mean? Everybody has that sort of heyday that they remember being in ComedySportz. And that moment, that heyday of ComedySportz in Milwaukee, I'll always carry with me as like one of the most important times of my life. Because not only was it just doing improv, it was the bonding. It was how this show, ComedySportz, brought us together, united us, kind of like we were one. It was your friends. It was your family.
Oh,
you know what
definitely.
I mean? And they've helped me through the darkest of times that I've ever had.
Yeah.
I lost my sister in 92. They were there for me. They were there in more ways than I can mention in 30 minutes.
Right.
But we even did a show that weekend to benefit her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as benefit for the family, to our family, to pay for costs. But like, that's just huge.
Right.
It's all, like I said, it's just, I can't say it's just improv, but it is the ComedySportz, the feeling I had, the moment I had with ComedySportz back in the 90s.
Yeah. It definitely is a family.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, before we end, we're going to play a couple quick games.
All right.
All right. But I do want to know about your nickname, Copus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
That came from like a friend of mine, this girl, Michelle Stiefvater, who was like, I was really close friends with her family. I knew, like, I used to wait up, at night till like midnight for her dad to come home from the post office so we could play cribbage in their kitchen. And I knew Michelle, Wendy, and Tara, the daughters, and Jean, the mom. Like I knew that their family was tight with me. And Michelle used to just always be mad at me because I was always kind of like laid back. When something would stress her out or stress other people out, I'd just be like, guys, relax, it's going to work out. And she'd constantly go, you're so copacetic. You're so copacetic. I'm going to call you Copus. And I hated that. And she would always call me Copus.
Well,
for whatever reason. I mean, for that reason alone.
There you go.
So she would constantly call me Copus. And then eventually when I got into comedy sports, I was like, the only nickname I've ever had is Copus. And then that stuck for a bit. But then I was like Head and Shoulder. My name's switched, but my first nickname was a carried-in name from previous childhood memories, I guess.
Well, I love hearing everyone's origin story for their nickname.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. All right, I'm going to pull out 2 random comedy sports games from this pile.
Oh, my God.
And I'm going to have you talk about which one is your favorite. Like, would you rather play? You know what I mean? If we were doing a show here. All right, so I've got, let's see, Sideline Debate. And Town Meeting.
Oh, man, those are both really fun. I think at the time I would have rather done Sideline Debate.
Okay.
But I so enjoy the Town Meeting, being out in the audience.
Well, you're a great character actor.
What was that?
You're a great character actor. You always came up with great characters on stage.
Oh, thank you. I think it's scary a little bit because you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing for me, like with Town Meeting, especially in Town Meeting, you're playing against characters like John Polesnik pulling out different accents and characters, and Joe Cortese and Angelo.
Right.
Like, it was really hard to be like, my character's going to be funny. You know what I mean?
It is an intimidating game.
It is. And then, especially with that group, I was just like, I'm going to go first. I don't want to like have to be the anchor of this game, you know? So
right.
I guess Sideline Debate would be the one because I had fun miming, and if I was guessing, it was okay if I love the idea of a game not being successful, but being really funny. There's an old bit of, and I'm sorry I'm taking long, but
that's fine.
Jim Gallagher, they were trying to get him to say Cheetos.
Okay.
And there's maybe 5 things. It's the same kind of game, the idea of guessing. But he got cheese and toes, but he couldn't put together Cheetos.
Oh, my God.
And the whole game was based, and actually was 5 things. So they didn't get past that one thing. And which you think, oh, my gosh, what a horrible game. You didn't even get past one thing. But it was the funniest game because the audience was in on the joke.
Absolutely.
Like, they knew that he couldn't put it together. And how funny that was because he was getting so frustrated, and we were having the times of our lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all about the crowd, the audience enjoying it, not whether you get the answers. Yeah, absolutely. All right, last game. It's a would you rather question. Got to get to know you a little more here.
All right.
This is, I apologize. I just pulled a random one that's pretty gross.
That's all right.
All right. Would you rather lick the inside of a used toilet plunger or the inside of a football player's protective cup? That's really bad. Those are really bad.
Horrible. These are horrible. At first, I was like, number 2. Like right away before hearing number 2, I was like, number 2.
That's yeah. Those are bad.
No, it'd have to be number 2. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's too many. Yeah.
There's too much going on in that plunger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Kurt,
I look forward to doing this afternoon. Thanks for making the option clear.
That'll be the party for your kids today. Let's
Dear God.
Well, thank you so much for giving me some time during your day.
Thank you. Thanks for calling.
Yes, this was so much fun. And say hello to your lovely family. And next time you get to Milwaukee.
And we'll see you soon.
I hope so. Next time you get to Milwaukee, you got to let me know, and we can do this face to face, or at least perform together. I would love to do a show with you.
That would be fantastic.
All right. You're the best, Kurt Scholler. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
The ComedySportz Podcast is produced and engineered by Kyle Hanneken. Our announcer is Mr. PJ Rockwell. Feel free to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Comments and inquiries can be sent to the ComedySportz Podcast at gmail.com. Created and hosted by me, Christine Rollo Capriolo. See you next time.
The ComedySportz Podcast is an independent production made by CSz players. The views and opinions expressed by the podcast host and any guests are their own and do not represent the views and opinions of any CSz location or CSz Worldwide. Vocabulary used by the host and guests is not necessarily representative of the CSz brand.